and in your ground. The church has given up a lot of ground when it comes to fighting sin because we don't want to look like we're mean and want to get along with everybody. Jesus did it in a stern, loving way. He just didn't say, it's all right, let's just go along with it, it's fine. No, he didn't do that. But we're going to learn about a certain man tonight. And if I can ask Brother Eddie if he would pray, please. Heavenly Father, thank you again for being able to be here tonight. Pray over this space, Brother Ron's preaching. God, help us to receive our hearts in Jesus' name. Chapter 23 of 2 Samuel deals with 37 men of David. It's called his mighty men, and some of the acts that they performed. They were David's closest companions, ones that fought right next to him, thick and thin. Them 37 were right there with him, no matter what. And that's what we need when we're out here in the world. We need a friend, maybe your spouse or somebody else that is going to be there with you to fight this battle. Because we can't fight it alone sometimes. Sometimes we feel we're alone, but guess what? There's Christians all over the world fighting the same battle. So 2 Samuel 23 and 11. And after him was Shammah, the son of Agi, the Hararite. And the Philistines were gathered together in a troop. And there was a piece of ground full of lentils, and the people fled from the Philistines. But he stood in the midst of the ground and defended it, and slew the Philistines, and the Lord wrought a good victory. Now, just reading this is the only time this is mentioned. What good would have been a ground full of lentils, especially after a battle? After you fight on this piece of ground with lentils, they ain't worth nothing eating then. I mean, it's over with. Why would this man stand and face the enemy when everybody else fled over a piece of ground full of lentils? Don't make any sense if you think of it. If you say your common sense, why would you stand and fight this battle? But if I'm studying, this piece of land bordered the Philistines. It was right on the border of them. And if they could get this piece of land inside of Israel, they would have a launching pad that they could go on into Israel and attack. They wanted this piece of land. They wanted what was on that land because they weren't really farmers. The Philistines weren't. But if they could get free food and a battlefront set up there, they would be unstoppable. And Shammah knew this. He said, no, we got to stand our ground. We got to stand here and protect what is ours. We got to say no to the enemy. You've taken enough territory. You've come into my territory too much, and it's time for you to just turn around and go on back because I'm standing my ground. Sometimes you got to take that stand even when you're the only one taking your stand. When sometimes you think you're the only one. Poor old Elijah thought he was the only one, but he found out later he wasn't the only one. And this was the third man mentioned, so he was pretty well high up towards David. You know, it takes you back to David when he faced Goliath. He stood his ground. Even with his own brothers and the men of God, the army didn't want to go out and face Goliath. David said, I'll do it. He set a precedent that day because if David would have said, I can't do that, what kind of person would they have thought of him when he became king? Well, he was afraid to fight the Goliath. He was afraid to do what he should have done. But because David stood his ground back then, he showed these men that you can stand your ground in the face of adversity. Today, our mentality or the world tells us that you need to accept us and get along with us. If you just be quiet and just let us do our thing, and just go along. But we can't do that. I remember back in the 80s and early 90s, the church world had this big program that they would send their kids who said that they were gay off to a camp and try to browbeat gayness out of them. You can't browbeat sin out of a person. They would starve them. They would isolate them. They would keep them up all hours of the night, trying to shame them that they were gay, but that ain't the way you combat sin. And we got a bad name. The church got a bad name for that. Of course, I would think that's a bad name, because if you take somebody out in sin and try to do them things, you're just going to drive them further and further away from God. Jesus never did that. He loved them. He left the choice up to them, say, this is what you're doing wrong. I love you. But you can't browbeat sin out of somebody. But now when the sin comes against you, you can say, you can go on back like Shammah did. Nope, I'm standing my ground. This is it. You know, he didn't stand out there and try to convert the Philistines that day. They weren't going to listen to him. They were going to kill him. And we are to tolerate. That's what society today says. We need to tolerate them. Well, you don't tolerate me. You don't tolerate my children in school when they stand up for God. You don't tolerate my church. You don't tolerate anything I do. So why do I need to tolerate your sin? So long the church. And so after the shaming thing in the 80s and 90s, now the church has turned to, we need to be their friend. Allow secular music in the church. Allow drinking in the church. Yes, I said drinking. There are churches that allow drinking inside the church. Bringing your coffee and sitting at a coffee bar, eating your pastry while you listen to the pastor preach. And I mean, we have it all. Mary and I have been in churches where we saw right before the church, choir members bringing their not Chick-fil-A, but Burger King, McDonald's and stuff, right up in the choir loft, sitting up there and eating before church started. I'm like, you can sit out in your car and eat it. But now we're tolerating all these things in church. We're allowing it because we think if we be their friends, we can win them to the Lord. It don't work that way. It's like the old saying, oh, I'm going to get married because I can save them. No, I'm sorry. They're not saved before you're married. What do you think? Well, you ain't going to get them saved after you're married. You're the ones end up going to feel like you're slipping. We can't tolerate sin. We can't allow sin in our lives. We got to stand the ground and say, well, you come against my family with this sin, I'm going to love you, I'm going to pray for you, but you're not bringing it to my doorstep. It's not coming into my house. It's not going to live in my house. And sometimes that's hard to do when it comes to your kids and your family, but you got to come to a point and say it's God or it's the world. Which one is it going to be? And you can't do both. And so many times the church has slipped on that. But Shammah said, you know what? I'm not going to do this. All these Philistines coming this way and everybody's running off. Now the man before him, I forget his name right off bat, he just slew 800 people. And the people came back and spoiled the army. They only came back to get the goods after the man defeated them. And now they run off again when the next band of Philistines come. So you ever felt that way? That every time you face something, everybody runs off, and then when everything's good, they come running back. And then here comes another wave, they all run off, and they leave you alone, and then they come back. No, that ain't the type of people you want to be around. We got to stand our ground. We got to say, you know what? I know who lives in me. I know who saved me. I know what's right and what's wrong. I know that you're trying to just twist everything. And today's society will twist every word you say. You hate me because I'm this way. I said, I don't hate you. I actually had an 8th grader tell me to my face I hated her and never met her in my life. I said, why do I hate you? She said, because I'm gay. I said, I didn't even know you was gay. She said, well, you look at me. I said, well, I looked at it. I mean, it's a whole class of kids I never met in my entire life. She was under conviction. I said, I didn't even know you're gay. And if you're gay, I don't hate you. And I left it at that. But people think you hate them because they're a certain way. No, you're just doing what sinners do. We were all out in sin, and we did what sinners did. That was our lifestyle. That's what we did. But Shammah said, you know what? This piece of land is strategic. We cannot lose this land. We cannot give up any more to the enemy. And we have given so much up to the enemy in our personal lives, in the church life, church as a whole, that it's hard to get your land back. It's hard to get your stuff back. When you keep giving, and giving. And that's what's happened to Israel over the years. They kept giving some land, kept giving some land. And then finally it came back and bit them. You can't keep giving your stuff away and not expect something bad to happen. Because one day you're going to wake up, you ain't going to have nothing. And that goes for your spiritual life too. If you start giving a little bit of your spiritual life away here and there, well, I don't feel bad, but I just think I'll just stay home tonight. Or, you know what, I've gone to church all week. I know they're meeting to do something special at this place, but, and you just keep, maybe I'll cut out church a little early or this, and we start slipping on those. And then one day you'll find yourself, you really don't want to go. You really don't want to pray. Well, today's been a long day. I don't think I'll read, or I don't think I'll pray. It's been just going to go on to bed, and pretty soon it's just going to get easier and easier to slip on them things. And we serve a God that doesn't slip on his promises, so why are we slipping on ours? But Shammah said, you know what? Not going to tolerate this fighting anymore. We're going to stand still. If David could face a giant when he was a teenager, a runt, David was a small little guy when he faced Goliath. And what happened that day? They slew the whole Philistine army. Just not Goliath. They slew the whole army, chased them down, and took care of it. And that's what we have a problem with when Satan comes our way and we finally get him off our back. We don't finish the job. Oh, he's leaving me alone. I'll just drop it. No. Finish the enemy off. Say, this part ain't coming back in my life again. Another problem may come in your life later on, but say, nope, with this problem, no, we're not tolerating this anymore. You just go back across the border, or you're going to get whooped like you just did. Just get out of my life. But we don't want to run off sin. What if I make my friend mad? Guess what? Your friend don't like you because you're Christian anyways. They're just hanging around you for what you can get from you. When you have money especially, everybody's your friend. Everybody's showing up when you have money. If one of y'all announced, I won the lottery, millions of dollars, everybody be lining up at your door. Remember, I was your second cousin twice removed from this side of the family. Why are you back there? We're all related to Adam. Give me some money, But we can't allow the enemy to take our ground, our homes. When you got your home established in God, you can't allow the enemy to come into your home and destroy your home. Now, you can allow people to come and visit, and what I'm saying is allow them to take the place of your Christianity, to take the place of your God in your house. That's your domain. That's your life. We can't allow the enemy to have any part of our lives. Because if you give him that one little piece of land, and it's another piece, and another piece, and another piece, and pretty soon, Satan's gone. He said, ha, got you. I'll drop you where I left you. Hey, he don't care. He knows where he's going, and he wants you to suffer with him. You got to remember Elijah. He was on the run. And he was having a pity party until God straightened him up. And he had to start standing his ground. Can you imagine if he didn't stand the ground against the prophets of Baal that day to say, who is God? Then people would have still been serving Baal. And he went up against hundreds of prophets. Him against all these. It's just one of him. And God showed up and showed out that day. Because he stood his ground. He said, no more. He said, today we're going to decide who is God. And that's what we got to decide. Who is God in my life? Is it the world, which is Baal, or is it God? Not a little God, but God. Who is God in my life? And then I think about Jonathan going up the side of that cliff just to take out 20 Philistines. But that cliff overseen where Israel's armies were. That was another strategic piece of land. You got to fight for every piece of land, for everything that you want in your Christian life. Because if you don't, Satan will get you. We got to keep fighting. We can't stop fighting to the day that the Lord returns. Because Jesus even told his disciples, he said, you think I'm going to suffer? Things you're going to go through, the things you're going to see, and what your families are going to see, what's going to come about, it's going to be worse. Wider scale. And only John ended up dying of old age, even though he tried to kill him several times, but everybody else was martyred. Even Paul. But they fought all the way, and Paul said in his last words, I fought a good fight. I stood my ground. It would have been easy for Paul to go right back to the temple, told the high priest, you know what, I lost my mind there for about 20 years, and this Jesus thing, I thought it was it, and, that wasn't all it, and they would have accepted him back. See, we told you Jesus is nothing. But Paul said no. Because once he knew what ground he stood on, he knew where he had to go. He had to defend it. And sometimes it causes our lives to defend what we want to stand for. What man in this church wouldn't go to all lengths to protect his family? Might lose the battle in doing it, but you're going to protect your family at all cost. And that's what Jesus did. He protected his family by going to the cross. And it cost him his life because he stood his ground and he looked Satan square in the face and said, I'll take them keys. They belong to me. They don't belong to you anymore because I own it all. I created it all. I even created you, Satan. So I own you. I own it all. We don't forget that. God owns Satan. He created him. He owns him. But tonight, we need to be like Shammah, who stood in those lintels. And he said, you know what? This land might be destroyed when I'm done. And this food may not be edible when I'm done. But they ain't getting my land. I remember Brother Eddie telling stories about his daddy, how they would come on them peach orchards and try to mess around. His daddy would get that rock salt shotgun after them and blast away. Yeah, you ain't coming into this. You're getting out of here. He'll fire that gun in a heartbeat, his daddy would. You got to stand. You got to say, this is my land. This is my territory. This is my life. We have one life. And that's it. We have one soul. That is it. We don't come back reincarnated as somebody else. So, this is all we got. We got to stand for who we are. Now, people may think you're crazy for standing up for God. But in my case, they already think I'm crazy, so it doesn't really matter. They're going to think I'm crazy anyways. And if you ever rode with Kathy, you'd know she's crazy the way she drives. If you weren't prayed up before riding with Kathy, you are prayed up when you're done riding with Kathy. She's like her daddy. Hold on. Boom. And gone. Brother Stedman would pull out in front of somebody in a heartbeat. Scare me to death. But you would be prayed up. But people are going to think you're crazy anyways because they say we serve a fairy tale God. Until one day I asked one guy and he never came back with an answer. Never answered me back. He still works next to me. He's never answered me. I said, you say I serve a fairy tale God. He's a fairy tale. I said, do you allow your kids to watch Cinderella, Peter Pan, Snoopy, all that? Yep, they're fairy tales. Cartoons. They're made up. What's the difference? If your kids can watch all that, then I can serve my made-up fairy tale God. He's never come back with an answer for me. So let me serve my fairy tale, and you just go ahead and serve yours. We'll see who's the winner at the end. See, because we got to tell people, hey, you may think I'm crazy, but I read this back of this book, and if I hold on, I win. I don't have to go through all that stuff in the back of the book because I won. Because when the Lord steps to the portals of heaven and God says, bring them home, I'm gone. Mary gets laughing at me because I said one day he's tooting and I'm going to scoot. He's going to blow that trumpet, toot that trumpet, and we're scooting. We're out of here. Mom and Daddy believed in the rapture so much that we did rapture practice out in the front yard growing up. That's how much they believed in the rapture. Because I grew up in a godly home. And they wanted to make sure their kids knew who God was. God is your provider. He's the one who gave you everything you have. And who are we to give up that? If he gave it to you, why do we want to give it away? Why could you turn your back on God, especially when you're saved and filled with the Holy Ghost and you're from fire for God? How can you just give it up and turn away and walk off? But people do every single day because they gave up too much land at a time. We see big churches collapse because they give up too much to the enemy. You can't mix the world and God together. It don't work. Your members are going to start serving the world more than God if you start bringing the world into the church. And that's what Shammah did. David's men, they knew if they gave up land. Back then, land was a big thing for them. Land's still good today. And people, when you own land, they think you're. But back then, land was a big commodity because they didn't have money like we have money today and other things. You kept your land because you used that land to eat. Not only farm, but you hunted. You did everything on that land. That land provided everything you needed to live. And they said, no, we're not giving up this land. Even David said, no, we're not giving up this land. And you've seen what happened to David when he was king. He gave up Jerusalem to his son because he got scared. Had to take it back. But you can't give it up. You got to keep a hold of it. And tonight, I'd encourage you all just to say, you know what? What little piece I got might not be that much. But God's given it to me. I didn't give it to myself. I might have been a sinner and worked and got all kinds of stuff, but guess what? It's going to go away just like the Christian's going to go away. When we die, sinner can't take their stuff, and we can't take our stuff. So either way, all the stuff is staying behind. It's not going to go with us. So what we do have is from God. And who are we to give it away to the enemy? If you got a talent for God, why do you give it away? If you're called of God, why do you stop the calling? We got to keep going. We got to keep moving. Because I guarantee you, each of you in here tonight has somebody watching you that wants you to fall. They're just waiting for you to turn your back on God so they can say, I knew it. I knew they wouldn't last. I knew it wasn't real. They gave up. Brian, they're looking at you. Even Brother Eddie, everybody's looking at everybody going, if they just give up, I can prove to the world that this Jesus thing ain't real. So people are watching you to see what you give up. And we got to be careful because I have found myself at work. When people start telling jokes, I have to remove myself from there. I got to walk away, go to another place because I don't even want to be associated in that circle of telling some of the jokes they tell. And they say, where you going, Ron? I'm going over here to do something else. I just don't want to put up with that. I don't want to have to listen to it. So we can't even associate because God has given us everything we want. And I will close with this. When David was running from Saul and he went and hid out with the Philistines, he went and hid out with the enemy. Can you believe that? He was been killing the enemy all his life, and he goes hangs out with the enemy. Now the enemy is going to go and fight Saul and the Israelites. And they said, you ain't going out there to fight. His master wanted him to go, but the other high commander said, he ain't going out there. He get in the middle of the battle, he's going to turn face on us and going to be fighting us. See, the enemy knows who you are. The enemy knows who you're fighting for. And if he knows who you're fighting for, then why are you allowing him to take what you have? Protect your lentils. For me, lentils ain't one of my favorite things. I've ate lentil soup before. It ain't the best thing in the world to eat, but if it's your ground, defend it. If it belongs to you, defend it. If you see your child in trouble and people are coming after your child, you're going to defend. You're going to stand up for your wife. You're going to stand up for everything you got. So stand up for God, who has given you your children, who has given you your spouse, your life. your health. Stand up for him. Say, I ain't giving up. I ain't giving one more piece of land to the enemy. Even though people say you're crazy and you don't understand the world. Well, no, I understand the world. It's sin. I understand it. I mean, that's just three-letter word, sin. That's the world. But we can stand our ground for our family. And we all have family in this church. We all have family members that are so far away from God. Some that are just straddling the fence. Some that are on fire for God. But it seems like you're the only one fighting the battle sometimes. Kathy's been through some battles with Brandon, and I'm sure sometimes she sat alone at night going, I think I'm alone in this thing. Nobody seems to care. But she did have a church back here that was praying and saying, you know what, we might not be with her every night, but we're here standing, and we're going to help her defend this land because that's who we are. Don't be the friends that ran off on the man and left him alone to fight the enemy. Get in there and fight with them. But like I said, when you fight and you win, people want what you got then. But they didn't want to fight for it. And that's our world today. They don't want to fight for what we have. They don't want to fight for something that's good for them. I'd rather work hard and earn something. It means more to me than it just be given to me. I like to earn it. Say, hey, I did this. And you take better care of things that you earn and that you take care of. You earned it. You went through it. You're going to take care of it. So that's the way it should be with our salvation. We didn't earn that. We worked hard to keep it. So let's keep our salvation. It was given to us freely, but every day we got to work hard to keep our salvation because we don't want to slip and fall back and be the ones that run away. So tonight, protect your field. Protect your land. Protect things that God has given you. And fight. And we can stand up to the enemy. We can stand up to our friends, our family, and other people we don't even know in a loving manner and let them know it's wrong. I don't hate you. I don't like what you're doing, but I don't hate you. And that's the way the church has been perceived, as we hate them because the way we come across on them. But tonight, let's love our fellow man and show them in love that it's wrong, but at the same time say, I can't do it. And that's why I'm glad we have a church that ain't going to allow people in the pulpit that are not serving God right. There's churches now, it doesn't matter if you're gay, whatever, you can get up and preach. No, we can't do that. Can they come to church? By all means, come to church. But tonight I hope something I said that God has laid on my heart helps you and encourage you to stand your ground and keep fighting for the things that you love and to keep fighting for your salvation.